Why did Naomi Win need to meet Anna Goldfarb? Let me tell you something, people. This is the best friendship, community, social skills building episode since Badson and Krieger. I'm calling it right now. We talked about friendship and uncertainty. We talked about relationships and uncertainty. We talked about uncertainty and how it stacks up on everything from what we repair in the face of politics to what we don't repair in the face of just outgrowing stuff. Incredible conversation. So excited to put this out in the world. Jack forehand, roll some clips.
We don't really have control over any of this stuff. When we're experiencing uncertainty, what's happening is that we're acknowledging the fact that we don't know what comes next. There's a couple of different physiological responses where we literally take in more information. If we recognize the idea that failure is instructive, then we're going to understand that this uncertainty is a learning experience.
The best thing I can do for my friend is remove uncertainty. And I tell my friends, I love being your friend for these reasons. I love you're hilarious, you're intelligent, you're thoughtful, you're so caring. I love being your friend. I want to be your friend forever, just so you know. And I said, Daddy, you should reach out to him. And my dad never did. He was anxious. He didn't know if his friend would be mad at him for not reaching out. The uncertainty really, tripped him up. And 6 months later, my dad came down with COVID during a hospital stay, and he died shortly thereafter. And he never got a chance to reach out to his friend. That's what made me want to write my book, is because we talk ourselves out of connection so much, even though we can physically reach out at any time. And I started the process hoping to help my dad and heal my dad, but I ended up healing his best friend, his long lost best friend, and giving him that certainty. So that's why I'm such a proponent of, we can do this today. We can give this to our friends today.
So the only thing we've got left there is self-trust, and having that trust that we can handle the response. We reach out for connection, and if somebody says no, or I don't like you, having the self-trust to know, like, I'm going to be okay.
You're watching Just Press Record, now an Epsilon Theory joint right here, Cultish Creative U2. This is the show where I take two guests who have never met before, and you get to see them get introduced live. So let's get down to introductions. This first guest. Now, when people think of Friends songs, they're probably thinking of the theme song from Friends. They're probably thinking of Lean On Me, You're My Best Friend, with a little help from my friends. And aside from that's what friends are for, because we always want to shout out Dionne Warwick whenever we can, this guest has more refined tastes than that. And no, I'm not just going to Woody from Toy Story. This guest is more like the Wonder Years, the living room song friendly. You weren't born my brothers or my sister, but you're going to die that way. I love that. Or maybe Manthem by Bouncing Souls. What's up, New Jersey? This is an anthem for the friends of mine who never gave up on me. And I have to believe she's boy genius level true blue too. And it feels good to be known so well. I can't hide from you like I hide from myself. Flipping Madonna, that really was genius. Journalist, speaker, friend of the show, Nina Badson, and author of Modern Friendship, How to Nurture Our Most Valuable or Valued Connections. It's the great Anna Goldfarb. Hi, Anna.
Hello.
Hey, what an
Good to
intro.
meet you.
This
Nice
is a good
to
way
meet
to
you
get
too.
introduced.
Yeah, that is a lot. Your resume is chock full. I can't compete.
Oh, we're going to take it there. And I got to introduce you to my friend Naomi here, because let me tell you something. Now, she's not a book author yet, but maybe we'll work her down on this somehow. I'm going to hold my breath for it. Now, what do you do when you stand apart from a crowd, when you assess your risks, when you take inventory of your capacity for decision-making under uncertainty in all walks of life? You find yourself talking to somebody like Naomi. That's what you do. Expert in the finance field, but don't let that distract you. I've got some songs for her too. Now, who busts out of a box better than Boxcar, right? Because what's more self-serving bias than you're not punk and I'm telling everyone? And who psychoanalyzes better than Keith Morris in mid-career Keith Morris? So Circle Jerks era, the weird feeling of him at 1995 saying extra conformity bias in this. You're all puppets. Think for yourselves. And let me take it all the way then to Pup the Band. I still haven't watched The Tiny Desk. Don't tell them. Because trying to ignore all the morbid stuff, like the feeling you get when you start to sweat as you're listening to death metal bands. What is that? An ostrich effect? Maybe emotional reasoning? Affective forecasting errors? This guest can unpack all those things, lyrics included. By day, she's a psychologist and behavioral finance analyst at Orion, and she's working with also prior guest Daniel Crosby. But by night, Maybe we'll find out. That's part of what the show is for. Solve some mysteries for us. Watch me win. Watch me nay. It's Naomi Win.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Now, Anna, you're here for one at least specific purpose on this. We need friendship expert curation advice here on this one. So I know Naomi because Daniel Crosby, said friend, started this email chain, an unsolicited email chain, where he put a bunch of people on an email. And he said, we're all interested in this thing. We all exist in this weird ecosystem of the world. And he started this conversation. And I think it's been going for like a solid year, maybe 2 years
Yeah,
now.
we're about a year and a bit in at least. Yeah. Yeah.
What, why, how does a person do the unsolicited email add-on and tag a bunch of their friends together and take that risk? And then how does it friggin' work? Because this is maybe the only time I've ever seen this work.
You're asking, in my professional opinion, as a friendship expert, why did this? I mean, it's interesting. It's novel. It's fun. I mean, people do things for reasons, and it being fun is one of them. Certainly with friendship, fun is a big factor. That's something we want and expect from our friends. So I can see the novelty factor, and, you know, yeah, it's an interesting novelty, I imagine.
It kind of made me think, I'm sorry, Matt, I've just jumped the gun on that. It just made me think right now of those chain emails when everyone had a Hotmail address and it would be like, send this to 5 people or whatever else. There was almost an element of like fun internet times where we didn't do like the immediacy of texting. It was a weird email chain that just arrived in your inbox. That novelty thing rings true for me.
And also that's curated. I mean, you're chosen. So you probably already, I imagine, would feel predisposed to participate because it feels good to be chosen. It's like,
That's
I'm
it, yeah.
included? Like, all right, yeah. So I can
And I'm
see that.
included not in an awful Hotmail chainmail thing. Like there's
Yes.
Well, we'll find out. I might take it in that direction at some point.
it's all of a sudden going to devolve into that. Which is very possible. Okay, another thing, and only because Naomi, I feel like you need to hear this first too from Anna. Anna, you've got this like, I'm going to butcher this because I'm not going to look at my notes and cheat. Like the bathtub friends, the hot tub friends, all these things where I go, these are bodies of water I don't think of normally in my friendship hierarchies. Can you explain that metaphor to Naomi for me?
Yes, Naomi. Well, first of all, I'm a journalist is my background, and I've reported on friendships for about 10 years.
Wow.
And part of reporting on friendship is you get to speak to a ton of experts. I mean, I've written hundreds of articles on these issues, these kinds of things. And there's a really important friendship expert, relationship expert named Robin Dunbar. He's British
Oh, no way.
psychologist, Robin Dunbar. And you might have heard of Dunbar's number of having 150, like capacity, about 150 connections.
I didn't know he was English. Good to know.
Yeah. And I was reading this, and he talks about these hierarchies of you have like, an inner circle, then sort of an outer circle, 5 to 10 people. No, sorry. First one is like 1 to 2 people. Basically for women, it's their significant other and their best friend. But for men, it's usually just one person in the bathtub, which I call a bathtub. It's just usually their significant other.
Right.
So basically, it's how we organize our social lives, ideally. You have these different tiers of intimacy. But I rebranded it with these water features to highlight how fluid our relationships are. And, falling in love, Dunbar found, will cost you 2 friendships. So people that might be in your jacuzzi, that's the 3 to 5 closest friends, fits about a jacuzzi's worth of people. When you fall in love, your priorities change, your availability change. So you might have less time for one of those people, and they kick down to your swimming pool, 10 to 15 people that you, double date with, coworkers. People might house sit or pet sit for you. So it's really just a way to understand how fluid your social circle is. And I was inspired by going to a pool party when I was the kind of person who goes to pool parties. And you'd go to the jacuzzi, and then you'd be like, I want a snack. I'm going to dip into the swimming pool. And that's how our friendships are. Our friendships are very fluid. I rambled a bit because I'm nervous to meet you, Naomi, but
no, don't be. I love that idea. It's interesting. Well, also, England has a lot to not be proud of, but we do get represented pretty well in sociology. But I haven't heard of Dunbar before. But I have heard of this idea of kind of a capacity around our ability to have really intimate relationships versus, acquaintances and whatnot. So I kind of like this idea of it being sort of this fluid. You've adopted this sort of very fluid idea of slipping between the zones. Yeah.
And I ran it past Dunbar before my book came out. I said,
Oh, no
are
way.
you okay with this? Like, are you going to hate this? And he said he found it very charming, like a charming way to represent the data that he found.
That's very cool.
And it's designed to give us more flexibility in our friendships and to understand how one moves from a jacuzzi to a swimming pool or vice versa, how you might promote someone depending on a variety of factors.
I wonder if this is almost backed up by the fact that at some point Google had the Gmail sort of circles or whatever, and then they got rid of it because it's more profitable to get rid of it and have people just given an onslaught of information that has no filter. Do you know what I mean? Kind of that overwhelm. I mean, I'm off topic here, but I like the idea when they did first introduce it. It was a little adjacent to the MySpace 8 in some ways, but the circle was like the Gmail version. But anyway, so they've gotten rid of that now, but I see a parallel.
But the problem with that is that people change all the time. The first thing I learned
it's not fluid enough.
Friendship is that friendships can change at any time for any reason. I mean, they're very fragile relationships. So that actually can create some stress of like having this public way to identify your friends, but then you grow out or you outgrow or a friend moves away or a friend becomes a parent and their priorities change. And then it's like, wait, you're not in my little like it creates a lot of anxiety to, be so formal with it. And
wait, so Matt, am I going to get in trouble if I ask some question right now?
No.
People
Lots
ask
of
a
trouble.
question.
Yeah, we're here. We're here for trouble.
Well, I got a question on that because what would be your take on the idea of internally somebody being shifted for you from your inner circle to a circle outside? Because I think there's a lot of discourse online around the friendship breakup, blah, blah, blah. And you don't necessarily need to have a conversation. I think people drift apart, all that kind of thing. And at the same time, I think, friendships, unlike family, they have to be tended to without kind of any baseline whatsoever. Not that you should rely on the baseline of being blood relative to a relationship, but without that, the entire thing is chosen. So if you outgrow a friendship, what are your thoughts around people talking around friendship breakups and the conversations around that?
Well, I mean, breakups, listen, friendships have never been easier to shed ever in history. We have more flexibility on who we can befriend that historically, our mothers and grandmothers did not have that flexibility. We can be friends with different genders. We can be friends with people across the world instantly, but we can shed those friendships pretty much without much friction.
Yeah.
So it's easier to shed friendships. It's not always a bad thing. I've certainly moved away from friends. I don't really feel that bad about it. They probably don't feel that bad about it. But when you do feel bad about it, it's usually because that friend played an important role for you. So it's really about what roles do our friends play for us. And so that's how you can understand a friendship breakup is you're grieving the role that someone played for you. One of the biggest roles friends play for us when we're younger is companion. They're our +1 to going out, to, going to the bars, going to events. But then when you fall in love, there's a reshuffling and a downgrade sometimes of, well, I was your companion, but now what am I? Like, what role do I play for you? So there's a transition there. And I think that that's where friendship breakups can happen is like, what is our role today? As our friendships fall off a cliff after 30. And
oh, interesting.
Oh, yeah. They like totally fall off a cliff after 30. And friendships go from a primary relationship to more of a secondary one. And there's a big transition with that of, well, what's my role now?
Right.
So that's what I'm hoping my work helps people understand is, well, now in adulthood, friendships are a secondary relationship. No one's doing anything wrong. It's just more likely that, your kids will come first, your spouse will come first, your job will come first. So our goal as a friend in adulthood is to be the kind of support that our friends want and need.
I'm so interested by all the variables that must impact that because I think there's an online dimension that we could look at. How has that impacted it? There's also kind of I was married pretty young and had kids and got divorced. And for me, it's been the other way around. My wagons circled really tight in my 20s. And now I have this group of girlfriends that I'm almost 40, where I feel like my friendships, if they're front and center, those women have been vital. And so it's interesting being married, obviously, that displaces some of that. I can entirely see that. And also for people like me, they become front and center in a way that at this point, I wonder if they could ever be displaced at all. But the other thing I thought was interesting about when you were talking was psychology has so many theories around relationships. In some people look at them transactionally speaking. There's just a couple different theories that are like, I evaluate how much I enjoy this relationship based on I give X, do you give X? I give Y, do you give Y? Which it sounds quite cold, but I think in some ways it's a universal baseline of lots of different sorts of trades of time or energy, or I don't know. I hate using finance terms to talk about relationships, but investment and value, I suppose, do come up at this point. It's an investment.
It's still transactional analysis. It's still
it's transactional. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think what's your take on that idea about how over time friendships have changed to become more or less transactional, given the fact that we're mediated by social media, things like that? Or is this a completely ridiculous idea that I'm tabling?
What could help is language. And I think that there's really insufficient language when it comes to friendships. And what I learned is that there's, different flavors of friendship. There's agentic friendships and there's communal friendships. Agentic friendships are ones that are activity-based, task-oriented. That'd be a coworker. That'd be someone you're both in a running club together. You're both working towards the same goal. Those kinds of friendships tend to go on until the costs outweigh the benefits, and then you detach. So you might have a friend you run all the time. She's your best friend. She's your running friend. Then you go through a divorce, and that friend is totally not helpful with the emotional stuff. And you might be like, well, I don't get it. This is my best friend. I see her all the time. We run together all the time. Well, that's an agentic friendship. The point of the friendship is to run together. So then you add in the emotional stuff. They may not be that friendship may not be built for that. Communal friendships are ones that are based on emotional support. Those are ones that you spend your leisure time with, your free time with. The way I think about it is, are we hanging out with our bras on or our bras off? Sorry, Matt. But if our
Matt's included in this. No,
bra is off.
Yeah, just checking. Yeah.
Default.
If our bra is on, it's probably an agentic friendship. And if our bra's off, makeup's off, or hanging out like on our leisure time, that's probably a communal friendship. And occasionally you have friendships that you can do both with, and that's probably your best friend that you can talk about, work, goals, activities, but also have that emotional component. That's probably your best friend. That's my best friend. We do both. So when you talk about friendships in general, it's like, well, what kind of friendships is it? There's also active friendships and nostalgic friendships. Is our friendship active? Do we do things together? Are you in my life? Are we making new memories together? Or is it a nostalgic friendship? We don't talk very often, but there's a lot of affection. Maybe you'd come out for that huge event or the wedding or the big 40th birthday, whatever, but they're not in your life every day. So even just learning about these different, not only do we have a hierarchy of who we keep close, but there's also, what do we do with this friendship? Like, what is it built on? Why do we invest in it? And I might have gotten away from your question about like why.
Oh, no, I think this is on point.
Learning about friendship has really helped me understand how to regard the friendships I'm seeing. And that's my hope, by giving people better language. Friends, it's like a monolith. It's sort of this graveyard of our lives. Like, well, friends are in one group, one category, but it's almost like people just calling food. It's like, you should eat food. It's like, okay, well, not all food is the same. I mean, ice cream, kale, it's different kinds. So with my work, what I hope to help people see is it's not just friends equal food. It's like, well, what is more nourishing, nurturing? What are the strengths? What roles do you play for one another? And why do you see what you're seeing with your social life?
I like what you said about the communal thing. I have mixed opinions on the idea of kind of alienation for a number of different reasons, but I think there is an argument to be made that in some ways we're sort of alienated from communities, or we could take an evolutionary psych perspective, wanted to, and talk about tribes or whatever. But I think the point I wanted to mention just was, as you said, communal, the bras off, bras on theory that you had made me think of this Irish philosopher who is, I think he's in LA now. He's almost starting I can't tell if it's a religion or a cult, I'm not sure, but he started something out there. But one of the points he makes that I think is really fascinating is the difference between community and to commune. And he talks about how in a community, you gather around a joint goal that's in high relief because it's in positive. But to commune is different. He talks about going to church or going to Alcoholics Anonymous. And he says what's happening there is this is a bunch of people gathered around a lack. And I think that's kind of, maybe I don't know how to pass it out other than using psychoanalytic phraseology, but they're gathered around a lack of something. So if you go to a church community, yes, it's a community because people are gathered together technically to do the same thing, but they're communing in that they gather around the fact that they feel like they lack something, they haven't approached God, whatever it is. If you go to an AA meeting, you're also in communion because you are gathering together around a mutual lack of whatever it is, ability to do something, ability to not do something. So I think when you mentioned the communal bras off friendship, this acceptance of being not perfect, this unsupported, this sort of thing I thought rung true for me. And I think I think in a day and age where people do tend to express feeling a sense of dislocation from the other, the idea of kind of aiming towards the bras off, I think is an interesting way of looking at communing with one another. I don't know. I liked your explanation.
Thank you. I feel like it's become it gets harder in adulthood to have those communal relationships because there's so many other relationships that are require our time and attention, our limited time and attention. We have more than ever competing for our attention.
Yeah.
And we live in a society where there's all these trade-offs,
Yeah.
Like there was a survey done in 2021 about like why friendships are on the decline. And a lot of it is, people are spending more time with their kids. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. But that time is coming from those friendships where that time has to come from somewhere. So people are more involved in parents are spending something like twice as much time with their children. But the trade-off is that they have less time available for friendships with other adults. So that's the challenges we have.
Yeah, that makes sense. As you were saying that, I was just wondering how much this is related to perception of time passing. Because we're in an attention economy, everything's trying to grab our time and attention. It feels fleeting. So for me, at least, I'm like, well, it's fleeting. I want to spend it all with my children. I want to focus on my kids. I want to have time with them because I'm constantly in tune with like this app's pinging, this phone's pinging, my email's going, attention everywhere. I just want to be present with my children or however you want to phrase it. And because I feel like time's always fleeting, I can't hold it. But I wonder if the relationship with time was changed and less divvied up by capital, if our relationship to time changed in a way that we're able to enjoy it passing more slowly because it wasn't passed into segments of how many hours in a day need to be spent working, if it would change. And I'm saying that because I'm thinking about when I was younger, traveling in Europe, seeing parents get together and there's no reason, like they're not doing anything. They're not getting together to do an activity. Parents are just getting together, families to just sit. And then children are just left it's a free for all. Do whatever you want. The parents are smoking. You need to go somewhere else. And so I wonder if maybe, how do I say this? Maybe if we were to adopt some sort of cultural tone where time wasn't divvied up or always allocated somewhere, optimized to, the extreme that it is, if our relationship with time got a little wavier and our time didn't have to be spent with a purpose, I kind of wonder if we'd be able to just be, I don't know, I wonder if our relationship would change that way. I think it's great parents to focus on their children. I just wonder if we're doing it because we're so desperate to grab those like minutes of time between the emails, which isn't great.
What you're saying is reminding me that we have a unique challenge in our society right now. Like I think back to those couples that can do that, can vacation with other, parents, have that time. We live in a society that sort of resembles a bicycle spoke, our networks. Like we're in the middle and we have these different branches of groups all based on different parts of our identity. Like people I grew up with, people I went to school with, people in my job, people in my neighborhood. And the challenge that we have is that all those people share common history with you, but not with each other. So that's the modern friendship challenge is, yes, I can have those deep friendships, but my childhood friends don't know my coworkers, just like my coworkers don't know the people in my church or something.
Yeah.
And that's why we're so exponentially lonelier, because we're not pulling from the same group of people to do these things with. Our identities have exploded. There's so much more choices we can make. And it's very hard to find people who have similar choices and values and identities as you. It's become so much harder. Like the fact that I'm married but I don't have children, it'd be hard to go with another couple if they had children, or it was like a divorced mom with children. It's like, we need to find a couple that has like similar constraints and freedoms that we have. And that's been so much harder for us. Like our grandparents didn't have this unlimited choice of how they can live their lives. It's like, it was just more of a oak tree. We're more butterflies. We can just pick up and go and find more kinds of people to be friends with. I can be friends with gay men. I can be friends with Eskimos. I can be friends with, like unlimited people, but that also is lonelier. I mean, it's inevitable. It's going to feel lonelier.
I think it's one of my favorite Freud books. It's really tiny. It's called Civilization and Its Discontents. He just floats this idea that, yes, we invented the train. Good job, humans. But what did we use it for? To go farther away from the people that we lost. And I'm here in this country. I'm not even from here. It's like, I quite literally got on that. Well, that's not literal at all. I got on a plane, not a train. But I did kind of embody that concept a little bit. And I don't know, I think sometimes psychoanalytically speaking, I believe that people are inherently alienated from themselves. And that's kind of an odd sentence to say. So I think there is a constant sort of internal self-alienation that's natural for the most part. I think there's something to that. But I think the alienation you're talking about with the bike spoke thing is real. I'm curious what you think about the bike spoke theory, which I think is accurate in relation to American individualism. And I ask that because I think, like you mentioned, if you're a married couple with no children, then if you're able to you're able to change your dinner plans on a whim, but your friend who has 4 children, probably not going to be able to pivot quite as quickly. And so it makes sense that with limited time, you would need to have war to find its own level in terms of that. Not because you wouldn't necessarily get on with somebody who has 1 million children, but just because the time you spend together, that's what friendships are built on. And your schedules are different. So I guess, back to my question, I wonder if do you see any connection between the way friendships are going in your analysis in relation to kind of American, what I consider hype individualism?
Oh
or
my
maybe you don't
God,
agree with that. Okay.
Have you read the book Habits of the Heart? It's from 1984. It's an incredible book that traces like American individualism and how people, how people operate and make choices based on this extreme individualism. I think it's had a huge impact on who we bring close and why, because, there was a study done in 2016. I think it was actually 2009, but it came out again in 2016 about how we lose half of our friendships every 7 years. It's by Gerald Molenhurst, a sociologist. And that explains to me a bit about the individualism of that we lose half of our friendships every 7 years. And the reason we lose half our friends every 7 years is because we change. We move. Moving disrupts routines. Our values change. That influences who we seek out and why. We have all these factors that make friendships harder to hold on to for longer. But what's interesting is there's other places in our life that might be a surer bet than investing in friends. Like our pets, for example. I think Americans are crazy about their pets. You know why?
Yeah.
Pets are not leaving you in 7 years, generally speaking. Like your pets will stay with you. Isn't that a wiser investment? Your children are going to stay in your life. Isn't that a wiser investment? Like it's sort of become this snowball of our friends are going to move away. Our friends are going to seek out jobs in other places. Why should I be investing so deeply in these relationships if I have no guarantee that they're going to stick around? My grandma lived in the same house for 53 years. So her relationship to friends was very different than mine. She was born and raised in Philly.
I love Philly, by the way. It's my favorite city in the US.
That's where I live.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. I love Philly. It really is my favorite city here. It's the best.
I love Philly, and we have grandparents. I'm sure your grandparents were similar. They were born and raised
Okay.
in like the same town, lived in the same house, and the kinds of friends they had were probably very like light based on, factors like, oh, we grew up together. They didn't have to work that hard to maintain it.
Yeah, that's true.
We have so much more labor and effort to maintain a friendship from all the different kinds of connections we've met. And that's the beauty and burden of modern friendships, is like we get to meet more people, more interesting people that we have deeper connection to, but then we're blasted apart from. So we're spending more energy keeping up connections that previous generations never, ever had to do. My grandma was not involved in million text groups and like her, it was very, very different.
Yeah.
Probably all the women in her neighborhood were Jewish moms with kids that went to the same schools their whole life. Like we just have a very different template we're working from. And I think
I'm sorry, my dog just barked during that. I think he heard us talking about pets. I apologize. He had the pet bark. That's like me. I'm involved in. This is why you've picked me as the control in case you lose everyone else in your life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think people make those choices unconsciously, but also I wanted to say that friendships have transitioned from being about favors to being about entertainment. Like now it's who do I get dinner with? Who do I get drinks with? Like who do I go out with? And before it was like more necessity of, it's literally a cup of sugar. Like I wouldn't ask my neighbor for a cup of sugar.
What's so funny?
It's crazy.
I think this is where I get into politics. That am I allowed to go into politics here?
Take it there, but it's also because I genuinely feel like this device changes our relationship with ourselves.
Yes.
And then changes the relationship with everybody else, because like I forget the adage about I think it was the Peloton CEO years ago saying like, my competition is not the bike company, my competition is Netflix. And basically everything is in competition with Netflix first.
Absolutely.
Right.
And Naomi, the point that you were making about like the alienation from self starts, but then we want to subcategorize all of our friends. We want to chop everything up and go like, you fit this need and only this need.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's true. The cup of sugar thing kind of made me laugh, especially in connection with being in Philly. When I lived in Philly, I lived in a street in South Philly, and I had my first kid in England, the other two in Philly. And the most insane thing to me, I was south, so I was off Broad on the west side, but South Philly. So I was just south of Point Breeze.
I live in South Philly, so.
Oh, you do? Oh, you don't? Yeah. Okay. So you know exactly what I'm talking about here. We're on this street. I mean, it's a street by street thing in Philly. Every street's really different, but a particular street had this personality where there was actually a couple multi-generational families on the same street. And it was at nighttime, the kids would go outside and play and adults would watch out. And this is the first experience in my entire life. I was heavily pregnant and locked myself out of my car, couldn't get in, didn't know what to do. My phone and keys, everything was in the car. And I thought, I'm going to have to do something. And so I knocked on my neighbor's door. She brought me in, she gave me tea. We called this thing. It was my first experience doing that. And it was really normal for her. And I had this bizarre experience of like, this should be normal. I would have done the same thing too. But it was I'd only lived in Philly for a couple of weeks at the time. No, that's not true. Probably a couple of months at the time. Anyway, all this to say, I had this new experience where I was just kind of like, the cup of sugar thing. Exactly. I needed something. And so I went next door. So now we all sit in our little houses, our suburbs. We can literally go from our garage to the store, back to the garage with all our food. Never. Oh no, I did not mean to get that word in there. It is the Northern's coming out. Yeah, I've established that. We could literally spend all day, or we could spend an entire week never running into another human. We could have our groceries delivered. We could do this. But at some point, that cup of sugar is used in socialist arguments around the idea that if you need your neighbor, and you learn to rely on each other, this is where community starts to come from. When we've gotten to a point where we've esteemed the idea that you don't need anybody else because we've made it, quote unquote, so easy to just kind of be in an isolated bubble, we've got a problem. The example I think about a lot with that is, forgive me, Matt, if you want to cut this, you can cut this. Elon Musk Hyperloop. Elon Musk hated the bus system and wanted the Hyperloop. Now, if you think about that, a bus system carries how many people? But if you read his statement around it, I think he just disliked the idea of having to touch another human being. But if you get in your own car and you leave your house, you go in the Hyperloop with its trashy LEDs and like out you come, you never have to touch anybody, you never have to interact with anybody. And I think at this point, it's the same online. We curate our online bubbles. We curate
Certainly.
whatever it is, the Twitter feed, the subreddit, whatever we're into. We can curate it to a point where we don't even have to interact with the other at all. And at some point, we had to interact with the other. And I think that changed how we saw friendships. So anyway, also to your point, when I was you mentioned friendships where you're friendships because it's like cupboard love almost. You're in the same sort of community. And it's funny when I go to places like LA to visit friends, I'll realize my friends haven't seen each other in years because they live 20 minutes apart. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I'm picking on, that's a low hanging fruit. LA is really bad for traffic. So, but I don't know. In some ways I wonder about that, how geography impacts all of those things too.
Oh, proximity. That's a huge factor of, how easy is it to practice our friendship? Where do we practice our friendship? Sometimes the places you practice your friendship don't exist anymore,
Like third spaces. What's a good place to practice friendship? What do you think would be the answer to that?
Depends on what you're into. I
Okay.
mean, we change all the time. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the club. I'm not going 11 p.m. to
Did you hear about the
dance
early
club.
clubs though? They've got early clubs now. They
I-
apparently do early clubs
That's
for
shut
for our
down by
age
like
group.
9 o'clock or whatever.
They're done by
Yeah.
9. Everyone's handing out melatonin instead of MDMA,
Yes.
and then we're off to bed. Yes.
It's like, it really depends. It depends on the friendship and what the reason is.
Okay. Yeah.
In my book, I talk a lot about desire for friendship, where desire comes from. And
Mhm.
what I learned is that every friendship needs an about, and the about needs to be clear and compelling to both people.
Mhm.
So what is our friendship about? That's a huge reason of why you keep a friendship active, is what are we doing together? What are we talking about? And how
So
compelling is that to me?
memes. Saying memes are the
Me-
best
it
way
could-
to test their friendship.
it
I'm
could
just
be.
joking. Yeah.
Right. Of like, well, what are we talking about? We're talking about Bravo?
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
So that's what I think people misunderstand about friendship, is that they think
Mm.
affection is enough to keep it active. But that's not how our behavior works. As you know, it's like it has to be
Yeah.
something apart from the friendship that we do together that's so fun and so exciting. And it's like, I want to do it with you to talk about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that's part of where desire comes from for a particular friendship over another. It's like, well, what is our friendship about? If you have a friendship, you guys went to camp together, how often do you want to talk about camp? Like every 8 years? Like
Yeah, that's
how
interesting.
can we only talk?
It's not going to survive that 7-year
Yeah.
cliff. I don't know.
Right.
So how does this intersect with I'm just so curious if you have any research on this. So I have a lot of critique around the idea of trauma-informed psychology, trauma-informed classrooms. I have a lot of critique around it for a number of different reasons. Not because I don't think that trauma seriously impacts people and needs to be accounted for, but because I think the way it's been handled, I've got some criticism around that. But it's making me think about the idea of trauma bonding in an age of Instagram therapy speak where, people are, how do I put this? People are very quick to use therapy speak to describe something or pathologize something that's just a thing. Not that trauma bonding is not a thing. Absolutely, that is a thing. But what do you think the difference would be between a friendship where you're able to talk about the things that have been hard for you and you connect over those, or you go through a common experience? Because the psychology is pretty clear. People go through a common terrifying experience together. There is a sort of bond that can be formed that can turn into a friendship if the about is able to grow with them. Or if it's unhealthy, they stay locked in that particular reason why they got together. What do you think would be the main difference between people who are quote unquote trauma bonded and restrained by the fact that they made a friendship based on the negative thing that happened versus the friendship where you can share that experience and it also be healthy? Is my question making any sense? I need help here. I changed my question
You're
now.
getting at is the reason for the relationship, how likely is it for its prospects of like being a long-term friendship, I guess? So like, is this a long-term healthy friendship?
Yeah.
Shasta Nelson is a friendship expert. She's the first friendship expert I interviewed for an article in 2016. And she's written a book called Friendtimacy about how, what healthy friendships need. And she found that friendships need 3 things: consistency, positivity, and vulnerability. So that would come into the positivity, I think, section of,
Yeah.
if you trauma bonded to take your example, and you talk about, whatever pathology you both have, and like the negative experiences you both had. When does positivity come in? Because you have vulnerability of this thing happened to me. You have consistency of, we're talking all the time. But if it's lacking positivity, then that might turn you off from the friendship. It's going to be draining. So I would, as opposed to the positivity element of like, okay, we both have this in common, but we also love going to Comic-Cons, and we love, we're both into, knitting or whatever. So it has to be the positivity element is my long answer. You need the positivity.
Yeah, that makes sense. So having a horizon together beyond the trauma.
Yeah.
How do you unpack that? Like that ladder of those three things, the consistent, the positive, and the vulnerable, Naomi, because that's the horizon is what I'm thinking of too. It's what do we think of? Because that's how we move from either a finite game or a finite activity to an infinite activity, or something where we see there's cooperative mutual benefit to hanging out again. And I'm only loading this in because there's this language angle that Anna, like, listen for this with me. Do you guys know the story? Maybe you, Naomi, there's a children's book. It's called like The Real Story of the Big Bad Wolf, or The True Story of the Big Bad Wolf.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's like
the idea that you can reframe something and see it from a different side. Yeah.
Totally. So the whole perspective is the wolf is going to get a cup of sugar to make his poor sick grandmother, but it has this like sneezing cold that he can't get over. He shows up at the house and the pigs don't want to open the doors. So he huffs and he puffs and he sneezes a great sneeze instead. And that destroys the house. And he's like, well, I can't just leave like a ham dinner on the sidewalk. It's this whole repackaging of the story. And it's like, wow. And it's this whole like, pig psyop by the end of the story, where he's like, they all banded against me. I'm really a good guy, and this is really awful. But I'm curious, like, you need that positive mutual layer, or you need that consistent layer, you need that vulnerable layer. What's the psychology of that? There's almost like a Viktor Frankl underpinning to this.
Yeah, I think you're correct in that. And Daniel would definitely love, shout out to Daniel and his favorite Viktor Frankl stuff here too. But I think that's true. I think any relationship would require those components, because I think what's happening there is they all permit benefit of the doubt, which is something, it's a key thing you'd have to have in a relationship that gives space for two people to grow in tandem without constraint. And that's a difficult thing to do. How do you balance being in tandem without constraint? And I think when you think about, there's two oxes, for example, in a yoke together, they are in tandem and they are constrained, but it doesn't feel like a constraint if they're moving in a similar direction, a similar speed. And so I think about it that way. If you have that vulnerability and you have consistency and you have these things, you're giving somebody benefit of the doubt. So when they do drop off the text chain for a day or two, it's not they hate me. It's like, oh, they must be busy. And you're generous with that. You're going to reach out anyway, and you're going to keep spamming them with memes, and you're going to call them and say, how are you? And not think, oh, well, fine. If you're not talking to them, I'm not talking to you. So I think there's a generosity that comes from it. And I think that's kind of where the psychology comes in, that I think if we're centered enough in ourselves to be able to handle it, again, we're back on uncertainty, I suppose. And as Anna mentioned earlier about, pets, for example, I do think sometimes with relationships, we're social creatures, we're reaching out to other people or affectionate sources to like steady ourselves in this really small flash in a pan piece of existence. Sometimes that's because we wish we had a little more control over that. And so we want to make sure we have a reliable source of affection, like our dog or a cat or whatever's going to not abandon us. But if we have a friendship that's very generous, I think it gives us more space to experience that. If we have benefit of the doubt, we have generosity. And I think you wouldn't be able to have mutual vulnerability without that sense of generosity. And I think it brings so much meaning to be able to have that centered self-trust and then grant that to somebody else. So you can stay tethered together without feeling like you're trapped in some way by, insert whatever. I don't know. Did that answer your question, or are we just rambling, coffee ramblings?
You hit on the part, and this is kind of where I, like Anna, for you too, it's that benefit of the doubt. And there's something about repair inside of this, like the commitment to repair when you hit those stumbles. It's just such an interesting nuance. It's
funny how repairs are better predicted than compatibility for relationship endurance. Your ability to say, oh, you messed up or I messed up, there's a gap between us. Something, that idea of the biggest misunderstanding is the space between two people. That's everything falls in the gap. I think from a psychoanalytic point of view, we talk about, well, maybe not, maybe semiotics. When we talk about language, I use example. I've stolen the example. I don't use the example from kind of the way Hegel thinks about things. He talks about, once we introduce, he talked about the Garden of Eden. This is the example given. So if we think about the fruit of life as an apple, for example, and Eve goes like, oh, look at that thing over there, and points, and Adam says, oh, that thing over there. We know they're both talking about the same thing. The apple's right here. The minute we introduce language, and I say to you like, oh, what kind of apples do you like? Now, it could be anything. I might be picturing a Fuji apple. You might be picturing a green apple. And now all of a sudden because we've introduced language, the very word that I'm communicating with you, so I'm technically connecting with you, right? But through the very act of connection through language, I've also now opened the door on a huge misunderstanding unless we have enough space to connect. You know what I'm saying? So I think it was the philosopher Simone Weil. She talks about this concept. She calls it metaxia, which I think is kind of interesting. She gives it a name. She uses the example of two prisoners inside solitary confined cells and the wall in between them. The wall divides them, but if they knock on the wall connects them. So that's the example she gives. So when I think about language, I think about that. It's the tool by which we connect. And at the same time, it contradicts itself by also opening the door on misunderstanding, because semantics can differ. And that's where that generosity and benefit of the doubt, I think, comes in. And that repair becomes really important. Are you able to say, I think we missed a step here, it's just so much more important than compatibility. And I think that's true of any relationship. But I think, in friendships, sometimes the stakes don't feel as high because we're not being romantically intertwined doesn't necessarily set off the identical sort of things from our childhood that romantic relationships often can. So sometimes it's easier to repair in friendships than romantic relationships for some people. But regardless, repair is such a vital part, I think, of any relationship, friendships included. But I may be wrong. We have a friendship expert here and I'm talking about friendship repair, but what do you think?
I think friendships are so much harder because they're ambiguous. I think
Oh, yeah.
when you
Okay.
Absolutely.
repair and you this is my spouse, this is my boyfriend. We've had conversations about what we mean to each other. We've had conversations about our expectations. Most of us have not had anything close like that with our friendships beyond second grade of you're my best friend.
Yes, no.
I'm going to sit
Right.
at lunch with you.
Yeah.
This is what I expect,
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, I see that. You need a
Friendship-
container.
Yes, you need a container, and friendships are so ambiguous. Are we still friends? I haven't talked to my friend in 6 months. Does she still consider me her best friend? I don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty, and, uncertainty creates anxiety. So I think friendships have never been more of a source of anxiety than now of what do we mean to each other? And then to know the appropriate response,
Yeah. Well, now I'm wondering if I'm an annoying friend, because I absolutely would ask my friends, are we still close or what? I would absolutely say that. So maybe I'm just annoying. I think you raise a really excellent point, though, because I think this is something that happens in relationships. If you haven't defined the space or the expectations, it's harder to give generosity in some ways because you wouldn't know what level to which to give that was going to be matched by the other side. It's an interesting point. I'm contradicting myself now, and I like that. So I appreciate it.
Well, there's a weird thing that happens, and I actually really it's the defining of the space and then also defining of the language and the terms.
Yeah.
There's something in the word choice here that feels insanely important, because we could also say the same thing to each other, but mean different things and not intentionally do that. What's that, Anna? What is that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how once I really started learning about friendships, I've adopted different strategies, and the best thing I can do for my friend is remove uncertainty. And I tell my friends, I love being your friend for these reasons. You're hilarious, you're intelligent, you're thoughtful, you're so caring. I love being your friend. I want to be your friend forever, just so you know. And just to give them permission of, people are going to invest more if they have that certainty of, no, she loves being my friend. I know this. I'm going to invite her out to more things. I'm going to include her. I'm going to share my life with her. And that's a gift we can give our friends today for free. It's like, I'm not going anywhere. I love being your friend for these reasons. And it's a wonderful feeling.
It's so important, because I think one thing that, as what I mentioned, I do spend a lot of time thinking about uncertainty and how we operate in that, since it's a given of being alive. We don't have any more certainty in life other than that which we give each other. And that means that we constrain our behavior to do the things we say we're going to do. And to give that gift to somebody of saying, look, life's uncertain. I might get hit by a bus tomorrow. God forbid you get hit by a bus tomorrow like that, who knows? But in the time that, in that uncertain, we already know that that's the given uncertainty. But within that, I'm going to make the certainty true that I'll always be here for you. It's a pretty good gift. Which I think that's all we have to give each other anyway at the end of the day, isn't it?
I don't want to like bum everyone out, but I did want to share this story with you, Naomi. And in my book, in the introduction, I gave an example from my life of where this concept came, really impacted me deeply. I had just written an article about should we reach out to our friend right now? Because during the pandemic, that was the advice of everyone's like, we're all home, it's lockdown, reach out to your friends. And I was thinking, well, why did you lose touch? Like, what's going to change that you have one conversation? I didn't have the language for this yet, but I was like, well, what makes it an active friendship? If this is a nostalgic friendship that you're reaching out to, what is suddenly going to magically make this an active one that's going to really give you all those benefits that friendships give you? And my dad told me that article really opened up a wound in his soul. And it made him think of his friend from childhood that he hadn't talked to in 10, 15 years. And he really missed him. And I said, Daddy, you should reach out to him. Like, here's his info. Here's his Facebook. Like, reach out. And my dad never did. He was anxious. He didn't know if his friend would be mad at him for not reaching out. The uncertainty really, like tripped him up. And 6 months later, my dad came down with COVID during a hospital stay, and he died shortly thereafter. And he never got a chance to reach out to his friend. 2 days after my dad died, I reached out to the friend's son on LinkedIn and said, I need to speak with your dad. Please put us in touch. And 45 minutes later, I was on the phone with his long lost best friend. And I told him that, he was so excited to hear from me. And I had to tell him, my dad just died 2 days ago from COVID. And he was, obviously distraught. And I said, we had a conversation 6 months ago about him reaching out to you. And he said, I bear responsibility too. I could have reached out to him just as easily as he could have reached out to me. But what I did was I gave my dad's friend certainty. I said, I want you to know that you mattered to my dad. And he did want to connect with you. So that's what made me want to write my book, is because we talk ourselves out of connection so much, even though we can physically reach out at any time. And I started the process hoping to help my dad and heal my dad, but I ended up healing his best friend, his long lost best friend, and giving him that certainty. So that's why I'm such a proponent of, we can do this today. We can give this to our friends today. And it's really changes everything. I mean, our friendships are our legacy. They are the most valued connections. I mean, that's the subtitle, is we value these people so much. And everyone has a name pop in their head of thinking of, who do I miss? Who should I be reaching out to? And we all think we have this time. So what you said really connected with me. So thanks for letting me share my story with you.
I appreciate you sharing it. I'm sorry for your loss. It's fairly recent too. I think what you said there about this missed opportunity for connection and that your dad experiencing that uncertainty is entirely relatable. And also I think something that I harp on a lot about is when we're uncertain, I think there's a tendency for our brains to think the opposite would be certainty. So in your dad's position, I could see myself thinking like, well, if I just knew what he thought of me, maybe it would be fine or whatever else. But the reality is that we can never have certainty. So the only thing we've got left there is self-trust, and having that trust that we can handle the response. We reach out for connection. And if somebody says no, or I don't like you, having the self-trust to know, like, I'm going to be okay. And not letting that stop you from trying is important. And yeah, I don't know. I'll be thinking about what you said there about that, the lost opportunities for kind of connection. And it's really all we've got.
Yeah. Naomi, drill into this, because I've heard you say this before, I think in more than one place too, that certainty is the only condition where there's both growth and learning.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
On a neurological level, uncertainty, the sort of synaptic kind of things that are happening on almost like a metabolic level, and when we're experiencing that anxiety, it's because it's new. We don't know what's going to happen next. So because we don't know what's going to happen, which the idea that we know what's going to happen next is an illusion anyway. There are a handful of things in the world where we do 100% know what will happen next. If you I'm
If you join a
gonna get coffee.
podcast
Yeah.
and your dog is in the room and you're mentioning your
Yeah,
dog
he's,
and dog's gonna
he's
bark,
gonna leave folks.
gotta be.
But there's really nothing I can actually think of. I mean, I think we spend so much time trying to manage our existence and have things be predictable. I think about apps like Lyft or Uber, where we want to look on a little map and see exactly where the driver is. We know exactly what time. Like, we want to micromanage everything to feel like we have control over everything. And I mean, like, not to sound like a 12-year-old in a UV lit bedroom, but it's all an illusion. We don't really have control over any of this stuff. But it's not going to stop us from trying to manage our existence. Because at the end of the day, we do have to manage it somehow, because we can't just wake up in an existential dread of uncertainty forever. Point being, and to answer your question there, is when we're experiencing uncertainty, what's happening is that we're acknowledging the fact that we don't know what comes next. So we're actually in tune with the reality that we're not sure what's going to happen here. And because of that, there's a couple different physiological responses where we literally take in more information. And that could look, when people talk about flight or fight, for example, that's a great idea that, your pupils get bigger. It's taking more light, taking more information, heart's pumping because you don't know what you're going to do. Lots of different physiological kind of arousal symptoms, but uncertainty can kind of have those conceptual ones too. We're not sure what's going to happen. Now, I think if you're going to fall to the level of your systems in some way. So if you're an anxious person who wants to lock down and get control over things, you're going to be more inclined to respond to that in that sense. If you're able to practice the idea of kind of opening that up a little bit to the idea that maybe you're experiencing a sense of discomfort because you haven't been here before, and that's not to be feared so much as embraced as a chance to learn something. And now you might learn by mistakes, you might learn through failure, and that's a scary idea for a lot of people, me included. Failure is unpleasant, it can be uncomfortable. But if we recognize the idea that failure is instructive, then we're going to understand that this uncertainty is a learning experience. And so at that point, that's kind of where that self-trust comes in. The self-trust to know that it may all go pear-shaped, and I'm going to still be here on the other side of it going pear-shaped. Then hopefully next time this happens, it will go a little less pear-shaped. So I think that discomfort of uncertainty, if we pause with that for a second, we sit with it for a minute, it can kind of suck. And also, we're actually really in tune with the reality that certainty is an illusion, and we can learn something new. There's a philosopher, Slavoj Žižek, that I like a lot. He talks about this idea that anxiety is one of our only real true emotions, because we're right in keen with that idea that everything's up for grabs and nothing's certain. So, did that answer your question, Matt?
It did mine. What other questions did that give you, Anna?
Sorry.
That must have.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because when you write a book, a self-help book about friendship, people are like, can you teach how to be a friend? Is this even something that you can do? Like,
Give me 7 tips and tactics.
Interesting. That's just a LinkedIn, that's a LinkedIn post.
But you got to cope.
Someone.
There's a whole other layer of self-help just for self-help authors.
Yes,
now.
and
how do you do it?
That's so much of the task at hand is, can you teach someone how to be a better friend? Can you teach someone to increase the chances that their friends will want to stay in the friendship and keep it active? And that's what my work explores is, yes, there's uncertainty, but we can understand why people make friends. And what we can do is play, this sounds a little cheesy and I apologize, but we can play the music of friendship. It's not just that we listen to music. I used to think of my friendships like CDs because I'm old I'm in the mood for Weezer. I'm going to hang out with this friend. It's like this. I'm going to hang out, I'm going to listen to No Doubt, which is this friend. But learning why people want friends and how I can respond to those needs better and create situations and change my behaviors to make it more likely that my friends will keep me around, we can help reduce that uncertainty. And I can be a little bit more concrete here. There was a study done in 2021 of the 5 reasons people make friends. And it's career, mating. They want to go out and meet people. They want a friend to go to the bar to meet other people to date. They call it desirable qualities, but it basically means chemistry. They're hilarious. You have hobbies and passions in common. You're attracted to being their friend. Emotional support and sociability, which means you just want to be in the mix. You join a book club, join a kickball league, people who bring you out to meet other people. But those are also the same 5 reasons why friendships fade. It's we aren't in the same career, or I'm not looking to date, and I am looking to date. I can't give that. I'm not as compelled to give that, to do that with you. But what we do with this information is, wow, if people want friends up with their career, I really care about my friend's career. I really help her with it. I go on business trips with her. I position myself of, I care so much about your career. I learned how to do emotional support better. If this is something my friend expects from me and wants from a friend, well, what are ways I might be alienating her with my botched attempts at emotional support. So what I'm saying is we can lean into this. This is why people want friends. I can up my emotional support skills. I can learn how to be more sociable of, let's start a book club. Why don't you bring a few friends and I bring a few friends? Like, we can play into this. So all that to say is there's not as much uncertainty with friendships as I thought. I have my wonderful, wonderful friendships because I know my friend wants to keep me around because I care about what she cares about. I can control that. I don't know. I'm sort of rambling too, but
no, I follow you. I mean, you're talking about making that shift between what are my friendships, what kind of level of fun we can have together, into how can I show up for you, which something that I think, this is, speaking of cheesy things, I'm going to go one for one with you on this one. This idea that when people are dating people, it's like they're trying to pick the right person, right? And the idea is once you're committed to somebody, you try to be the right person. There's like a flip, right? And so I think in friendships, it can be the same way. When you're younger, it's kind of like you're, 12, 13, 15, you're figuring out who you are, you're doing a thing, and you're kind of picking the right groups of friends, hopefully, or whatever else. And then at some point, as you mature, everybody matures. And as you said, less time available, more demands from other parts of life, domestic avenue, whatever. Then it's about being the right kind of friend, right? I think that's what you're saying. Like, how do you show up? That's the thing you can control. So,
yes, exactly. And I'm just such a fan. Like, I feel so optimistic about friendships of, if people had this knowledge, they would feel a lot more like empowered. And it's so cheesy to say, but
friendship evangelist. I like it.
I am a friendship evangelist. I say that. Like,
That's
I
great.
am so geeked up on friendship, and these are things we can control. These are the parts we can control, and this is the gifts we can give to each other. That's my spiel.
Like
you get it, Naomi. You get it.
No, I'm fully on board. Yeah, I have a group of girlfriends I've been thinking about throughout this whole thing. I'm going to text everybody after and tell everybody how much I love them again, just in case they didn't hear me yesterday.
I still
love that.
I still love you. What's the all right? So random question, and then I have a bunch of questions, but I have to ask this first because you're making me think of it. Anna, not a deep cut. What is Batman doing on the wall behind you?
Oh my God, it's Tim Curtis as Batman. That is
Joy Division.
It's a Brazilian pop artist, Billy Butcher.
Oh, okay.
And I also have a Amy Winehouse and Wonder Woman one
that's
too.
Amazing.
It's kind of a set. We have a few other ones of his work. He's brilliant, and just Batman is Ian Curtis. What is more goth?
That is the most goth thing ever. I was like, what is this? Is he praying the rosary?
I know,
What's going on? It makes it.
Curtis, and then Wonder Woman and Amy Winehouse. I have a Supergirl and Oasis. Like, he does a lot of like pop art mashups.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking to somebody who has, Jay Dilla imaged as Schroeder from Peanuts on the background.
There you go.
From the great artist Killer Mike. So yeah.
So
I get this. Okay. So it is a Batman related question, although we could make it into a Joy Division, New Order, and whatever other layer of questions inside of this too. My wife would be very happy if we took it there. The Batman foil thing. So it's like this whole idea of like, you need like foils as complementary. Like, Batman doesn't exist without the Joker. And we've seen this explored in all sorts of wonderful ways now. There's a foil thing where it doesn't have to be an adversarial relationship, but it gets to that complementary core of, we can't have growth, we can't have learning without some type of complementary aspect. What's the thing about like friends who are the same versus friends who are complementary, and how do we balance that?
Oh. You mean like, do they have different, we all bring different strengths and we to the table?
Yeah. How do we think about that? Because I don't know, I look at my own friend group and I think about this. I have a bunch of very diverse pockets of friends, and I'm also a super advocate for, hence this show existing. I want people from different parts of my life mixing all the time, because social media has just made things so boring to me that it's just like, I miss going to a show when I was a kid and being like, I saw a metal band and then a hardcore band and then a rap group and a ska band and things. I want all those things in one place, and then all the weird, I want
I know.
I want the goth kid to come over and evangelize Ian Curtis to me, and me being like, I never knew. Why do we need that complementary thing or do we need that complementary thing in our friendship in our lives?
Well, you're talking, there's this book called Vital Roles by Tom Rath that he talks about the different roles that our friends play for us. And what you're talking about is the mind opener role. Like, some friends are the ones that introduce us to new, directors, new TV shows, they're like, you got to check this out. And part of what is so wonderful about having a friend like that is because they open you up to new ways of thinking, new art. I have a close friend who's my mind opener, and he'll be like, you should watch this show from the 60s. It's on Prime right now. You should watch this. Did you hear this album? He makes me mixes. And I love being his friend, and I will be his friend, hopefully indefinitely, because of that role he plays for me. So it's not so much like one friend can't be everything to you. That puts a lot of pressure on that one person.
Yeah.
And part of understanding these roles is, they change throughout your life. And in my book, I did like an awards ceremony, like exercise of let's just give out some awards. Who was best financial advice of your friends? Who would that be? Who's most likely to give you a long hug? Who would that be? Who's most likely to cheer on a work accomplishment? So you can sort of map out who in your life is best and shines in these different ways for you. And if you come back 2 years later, it's probably going to change. Some of them might even be a child. Some of them might be like an older person that you never would have considered. So all that to say is friendship, I think we think of as like our peers and like girl gang or boy gang, I guess. But friendship is actually really expansive, and it might look and feel different at different parts of your life. I mean, my niece is one most likely to like go to Chipotle and then Target and have a great time. It's like that might be my niece actually nowadays. So it's just interesting. It's going to keep changing. That's sort of a roundabout thing, but we change so much, and our circles change too. And it's an interesting thing. It's inevitable. It's normal. It's natural for things to change. And it's just being okay with having flexible expectations. It's more important that we're flexible with the people in our life, because they're going to change, their interests change. We could always negotiate new abouts. And Matt, like, we both have, punk in our background. That's an interesting about. Maybe that'll look like, hey, do you want to go see a show? Should we go to a concert? Like, oh my God, that'd be great. And then eventually
come to Philly and see Catbite. We'll send him.
like, but having the about, and music is a fantastic about for a friendship. Actually,
Right.
It's one of the best ones. Music and humor are things that we love sharing with our friends. And then you talk about bands, and then our friendship's about bands, and then you become a role. You don't start up as a role. You start out with just a person, and it's the intensity of the interest that determines which role you might eventually play for one another.
I love that become a role part. What does that make you think of, Naomi? Because
It makes me feel concerned you're going to go to the email chain and start asking people who's going to give the longest hugs or something. I think that's the first thing you would think of. You're going to turn the email chain into an award ceremony. We can do that second.
No, what we could put that in the email.
We could
chain
throw it
just to
in.
see,
Let's see what
just
they
to
say.
see.
Yeah.
I want to drop that hand grenade.
Yeah.
I also want to say, but that was also like it's, hey, there's this birthday party going on the West Coast. Like, this email
that's
thread
true.
need a meetup at this birthday party. Should we all get
I
together?
think it does actually. We should hit Max up after this and see.
Okay, you
Okay.
should do. I will send you the awards ceremony thing, and you should send it to the email chain and have everyone like marvel at who does this for me. Like, who
All
is
right.
the person in my life that does that? I just think it's such a cool way to take inventory of who are the people in my life that show care, that I give care, and in all their interesting, unique ways.
It's funny. I think I have almost two reactions to that are contradictory, and then a probably higher mind reaction to that. I think one thing I heard a long time ago was a woman who was very ambitious. She talked about a book. I can't remember what book it was, but in the book it was talking about how did it phrase it? I'm going to completely butcher this. Something about how your net worth is related to like who you are is like a sum of your top 5 favorite friends or something.
Right.
And the idea being that you got to hang out with rich, whatever kinds of people if you want to be really rich or whatever else. Like you're the sum of your top 5 friends, or whatever. Which I just hated for so many different reasons. And I think it's usually I shy away from things like inventories because I'm resistant to this idea of being like, let me parse out the reason, because what I prefer essence, like the idea that, well, I'm into, if I checklist what my friends do and don't have, the checklist might look kind of wonky and not capture their essence, which is what I'm really attracted to. At the same time, I think the thing you're talking about becomes this really incredible exercise when, let's say, for example, the studies on depression, for example, being able to actually put an inventory and a framing to give a bigger picture of what's actually happening becomes this very powerful tool that people can use to reframe a situation, to experience all those positive emotions that make you less suicidal, feel like getting up in the morning. So that inventory I think you're talking about, as we're moving through a culture where you could go an entire day and not talk to anybody, half of us work remote, blah, 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 to take an inventory and be like, wait, no, hang on, I do have people who would give me a hug. I do have people who'd want to go on a Target run or whatever with me. Like I do have somebody who wants to go to the movies with me. Like what a healthy thing to do in a time where, I think it would be very easy to slip into, does anything matter? Do I matter to anyone? Does anyone matter to anyone? Like, you know what I mean? I think it's an encouraged way of thinking because it's really easy to profit off having everybody be their own little sovereign island. And I think so, yeah. So anyway, I think it's funny, as somebody who generally is very anti-inventory, I can actually see a lot of use for this and I like it. It's a different way of thinking.
One anecdote I share a lot in interviews is that modern friendship is a supermarket. Like when you go food shopping and you're starving, you make the like wildest choices. Your cravings run the show. You're like, I'm going to get some ice cream, some mozzarella sticks from the hot bar. Like you just put whatever cravings in the cart and you're checking out and you're like, how am I going to make a nutritious meal out of these random things I threw in the cart? Now, when you go food shopping and you're full and you have a list, it's not nearly as fraught. You're not as pulled by your cravings. And social media is a supermarket of you being pulled in all these different directions. If you're lonely, if you're bored, if you're like feeling low, I should reach out to this nostalgic friend. I should reach out to this friend. I haven't talked to her in a while. Hey, how are you? Thinking of you. You hear nothing back because it was too vague and you haven't talked to this friend in a long time. So like you're reaching out and all this cravings and you're like, Anna, let's imagine someone saying is, I'm reaching out to friends, Anna. I'm doing what you tell me. And it's like, well, let's like have a shopping list. Who actually is a good person? Like who is available as friends? Who's an active friend? What's your friendship about? What do you talk about? Why do you make time for one another? Then it's, well, I have these 3 to 5 friends and I'm going to be an outstanding friend to these few people. And I know I can't extend that standard to everyone I've ever met in my entire life. Like this is a sustainable way to think about having wonderful friendships in a world that's not built for them. We're in a world where we have all this connection to all these people that we don't necessarily need connection to on social media. You don't need to know what your second grade best friend's daughter is, wearing to her first day of school. So it's like your brain isn't designed for that. That's not your reality. Let's focus you on the people who actually are present for you. Let's try to bump up your skills. If your friendship's about emotional support, let's look at emotional support. How do you emotionally support a friend? How do you be non-judgmental? How do you be compassionate? That's what I advocate for. So the inventory is really just a compass of I'm making a choice. I'm not letting my friendships drag me around like wild stallions of, well, I miss my roommate from college. I should reach out to her. I should reach out. It's like, these are people living their life that don't live near you, that have other shit going on.
Stop treating them like Doritos.
Yeah, exactly. Just random little validation snacks. Yeah.
And it's a very different message than modern life, which is, look at this picnic of social media. It's all the people you know. Look at this party. And it doesn't feel like that. It feels like people it's all scrambled and it feels lonelier.
I think that's one of the biggest gaps between, I guess I don't really know how old everyone is. How old I am and like younger people is it's interesting when I've had private practice clients, for example, who are in high school, who've grown up with the internet, they've grown up with social media. For me, I grew up where people had relationships, like let's say your first love, your first significant other, and you have nothing in common and you go separate ways because you were 17 and it was popular, whatever, like you go live your life and that's it. Now, you see what that person's having for, lunch every day. You see like they're posting their outfit every day, blah, 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 blah. And it's interesting to talk to these high school kids and sort of be like, you can unfollow your ex. You can curate your own world. And I understand there's a danger to curating your own world that I think people have to be aware of. The answer is in the contradiction here and staying in the balance of checking yourself, obviously, the self-awareness, but also, like you mentioned, we're in a space and time where we're overloaded constantly by information we don't have, tending to be some sort of insight. And it's not, it's just overloaded data. And we're not meant to process it. It's a perfect state to get our brains in together to have us be sort of liable to making crap life decisions when we're overloaded with just information. But I think the compass thing makes a lot of sense to me. I do think, in school psychology, one of the things we did a lot with children who are experiencing just extreme emotional kind of overload was we'd say shrink their world, make their world as small as possible. Tiny little classroom, one teacher they trust, 2 friends that they know what to play with. Just make the world as small as possible. And in some ways, I think I used this phrase earlier, like at some point I cycled the wagons with friends, where that's just, I think I must have kind of quietly and subconsciously maybe done that sort of inventory, where I tried to shop with more intention around how I showed up, qualities I was bringing. And yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thought. It is a weird balance though between curating your world and being thoughtful around it and then, kind of getting into a hive mind though. And I think as long as we stay aware of it, we're doing the right thing, no?
I think democracy depends on us having people close that we talk to and see all the time. Like,
we need the mess. We need the mess and the repair and the growth and all the right.
One of my closest friends has very different political ideologies than me. But what choice do I have of influencing her, and saying, well, have you thought about it like this? Well, actually, here's what here's what I think, take it or leave it. And who benefits by me not talking to someone who comes from a different political, part of the spectrum?
And what better reminder is it when the world doesn't end just because you have a different idea than the guy across the street from me or whatever? Like, no.
I actually looked into this about friendships and politics, and I pitched it and they said no, but I thought it was annoying because it was a good idea. And I learned that actually politics doesn't disrupt friendships. It's the harsh reaction to a difference in politics. It's judging and criticizing a friend. That's going to alienate them more than having the different politics. But people aren't breaking up over different politics. It's the reaction. It's like, how could you vote for it? You're so dumb. Like, how could you fall for that? How could you think that?
There you go.
That alienates your friend, that reaction. So there's a lot of nuance here of, okay, interesting. You feel differently. I'm like, well, honestly, here's what I think, but take it or leave it. And then you can.
I think I partially agree and I partially disagree, or at least I think maybe there's different lines to draw for me. And again, this may be more of me just volunteering to be a terrible person. I'm not quite sure. But I think there is also a line. I have nothing to say. Maybe I'm just terrible. I think it is important to recognize nuance. And like we talked about before, the idea of being in tandem, but having enough space to kind of be yourself. The idea of being uniformly in lockstep with your friend, politically speaking, it would be very, very strange. I'd almost be suspect of that. But I think it would be difficult for me to maintain a friendship with somebody whose political ideology has led to the death of an entire population, for example, or they felt very aggressively pro insert whatever kind of statute that was systematically going to destroy insert whatever that I thought was valuable. Then I think I would really struggle to have a friendship and I wouldn't even bother trying to justify it. So I think maybe I do have a harder line that I kind of thought about before. But I think being sort of mindful around, I'm talking quite extremes there though, right?
But it sounds like I don't want people to talk themselves out of an opportunity to make a difference and change and just show like, well, interesting. It sounds like we both really care about this issue. Here's the way I'm coming from it. And you have this is a chance to model to someone. I had a friend who was really upset that our mayor, we didn't pick a Republican mayor or something. And I'm like, well, listen, in society, trust has never been lower. Trust in courts, journalism. We have a society-wide problem of low trust. We have different ideas of what would take to restore trust, it sounds like. But I framed it as not so much red or blue or this or this. It's like, well, this is a society-wide problem that we have low trust. And you can see, like, I got to have a discussion with her about it because we're different. And I'm hoping those things help change the way she looks at the world. And that seems like such an opportunity for someone who I know is a good person, who's smart, who's proactive. And like, why would I give that chance up? I feel like who benefits from me saying to her, oh my God, you would vote that way? Like, I'm done here. Not saying it's the same thing as, like a huge value issue of like, if she was, against, we all have our line. But I really feel like democracy needs people talking more, not less. And to show good people who have different backgrounds, we're looking at different media sources, different ecosystems. I think it's radical to be like, I want to continue the conversation. Obviously with asterisks, obviously, actually in my research, white liberal women were the most likely to break up a friendship over a politics difference, which is interesting.
Me.
It's not like across the board. It's white liberal women are the ones, especially.
Yeah.
I mean, because it speaks to the values, and values are a mismatch of values is actually one of the top reasons friendships buckle. So for us, it can be a value of like, I value this and you don't value that. We're not aligned. But so I have a lot of thoughts about that. But it's interesting that only white women seem to be like putting, I think because we friendships are a reflection of us, and it's a huge thing.
I suppose it goes back to your point earlier about what is the friendship kind of rooted. You mentioned the about, the role, there's a couple other things. If you're thinking about a liberal population, when I think about the way that American liberalism looks, and it's highly dependent on identity politics in a way that I don't relate to from England. No, that's not true. England's certainly gone that way for so many different reasons. But when I look at American white, middle-aged woman kind of liberalism, it is highly attached to identity politics in a way that I would criticize on the basis it has no material reality, and I've got class consciousness issues with it. But I think it opens the door then on breaking friendships, because your friendships will be based on identity too. And so if you don't share that identity, there's a question around about and a role immediately, which then also, if it's based around your identity, which should be fluid, if it's not, that's fragile. And now you're vulnerable in the friendship. So I think that makes a lot of sense to me why that would be the relation most likely to end a friendship in those regards. Yeah, because I think there's a door open on more turbulence and a requirement of having higher degree of control over somebody else's political alignment to have the friendship, I suppose. We're getting off topic. It's more sociology now.
I'm so excited to talk about this, by the way, you guys. Like, I haven't really gotten to talk about the political stuff too much. But I actually was just talking, a congresswoman reached out to me about how to think. She wanted to collaborate with me about how to promote friendship. And this is the kind of conversation that we had was, we need to focus on our commonalities. We need to focus on what we have, what we agree on, and start from there. And
you have to explore them. You have to explore them in this way where it's like, we'll go into this conversation. We're going to hit some value parts. We're going to bounce off each other, but then we're not just going to walk away.
Right.
Yeah.
Really tricky, really nuanced. Time out for 1 second. Are you both okay to go over a few minutes, or are you like hard pressed to jump?
No, I'm good. I think I have another 15, I think, before I have to get
okay,
prepared
yeah,
for
that's
the
my
next
max.
meeting. Okay, cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
Timing back in. All right. Which I'll halfway forget and then panic, find it. It's a great process. Okay, so I have like way too many notes here, and we're going to jump through a few of them lightning round style just for fun. Okay, so Anna asked, and I love this, and shout out Tom Morgan, because I have to find this clip now and send it to you because he's a huge fan of the Dunbar's number, and we've talked way too much about
is he really?
the significance of this. I think, Tom too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever, you've contributed some academic work here, Naomi. Did you ever ping like an equivalent Dunbar? Did you ever ping somebody and say, what's your take on my take?
No, I'm not that smart. Absolutely not. So if I don't think I've had any sort of novel ideas. What I really do is enjoy reading other. I mean, I grew up playing classical music, and I think the thing I liked most was that I was not creative or clever enough to put my own feelings into something. But the idea that somebody from the past could give me notation so I could play through it in someone else's kind of, I could play it my way, but they've already given to me, was this incredible tool for me as a kid. And as an adult, that's kind of transposed into reading, reading everyone else's theories and just like metabolizing them. I have no original thoughts. So no, I've never reached out to anyone and been like, I've got to take on what you did here. Giving me far too much credit. I doubt that'll happen. Doubt it. Yeah.
I think it's in there somewhere lurking. You think so, Anna? You think she's got it in there somewhere lurking?
Festering. Terrible ideas are festering. Yeah.
Terrible ideas are festering. Okay. I want to ask, so Anna, Naomi said something about this. I have to see if I can read my notes there. We were talking about, this is in the Bras Off parenting or Bras Off groups, and she was talking about the European trips and the adults with their cigarettes. And I'm curious about the relationship between cigarettes out parenting and Bras Off parenting.
Oh my gosh. It's cultural values. You got to find someone with the same values. It's not going to work. There's so many more rubrics to dismiss people on now. It's like,
wait, so you don't want to smoke with us, Anna? Take it, Anna doesn't want to smoke with us. It's fine. You value your lungs? How could you?
Right. I mean, you'd have to find other people that would be down for that.
Yeah.
It is really interesting, and it is really hard because the values of other parents or other people who would want to, like, it's hard to just say, open the door and kick the kids out at dawn and tell them to come back when it's dark. Because you're going to be judged by 18 different ways, a Facebook group and 6 Ring cameras or something, right?
Well, that's part of the, judgment is one of the 7 disconnection habits. And we're so judgy as a society. We're so judgy, and it's really had a chilling effect, I think, on friendships. Like, are you going to say the wrong thing? Are you going to do the wrong thing? And I'm rambling.
Do you think that's connected to surveillance culture too, though? Because I think something I've seen with, my kids coming up, like when I was, this is such a trope, but I don't think that people should not have to be accountable for things. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think we need space to be a little messy to figure out what is accountability. And when you're 12, you can't be held to the same standard as a 25-year-old around what you're accountable for. Not that you shouldn't be corrected, not that you shouldn't learn, but ideally as a 12-year-old, you're surrounded by an immediate circle that can say to you, hey, like, that's actually not okay for these reasons. And whereas now, I think instead of a 12-year-old having a couple of people, on their street or in the neighborhood or their church community, whatever it is, to say that to them, they're just online on a Discord server and no one's saying anything other than kind of. So I think what I'm trying to say at this point is the mistakes that are made, instead of having people like elders to correct, we just have people to pile on or people to support in anonymous spaces. Couple that with the fact that everyone's walking around, video cameraing. Wow, I'm so old. Filming? What were we saying here? Like, phone recording.
Pictures.
Yeah, the talkies, doing the talkies with the kids outside. But if, everything's live streamed. So I think there's something in there for me maybe around the idea that surveillance culture disrupts this as well, where that the judgment's paired with that. So there's sort of a question around, am I going to get nabbed online for this later if it's not perfect?
I know. Or even, I've, like, when I was in, I used to be a blogger in my 20s. And my blog was sort of popular in Philly, and there'd be message boards, or you'd email someone. Actually, that's not what I said. Then they'd publish the email that I'd sent them. Like, well, she just emailed me correctly. It's like, oh my God, there's nothing.
I cannot deal with that stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
like it
terrifying.
It really was a big education on, like, the internet is just so unwieldy, and people can say whatever, and there's no repercussions for violating someone's sense of privacy. My friend was saying mean things about my blog, and I emailed her to be like, hey, just so you know, I can read what you're saying. Like, I don't mind. I mean, you criticize all you want, but I mean, just so you know, I'm reading it. And because it's linking back to my blog, I can see that you're linking to me. And she posted the email of me, and she's like, oh my God, she's stalking me. It's like, I'm not stalking you. Oh my God, you brought me up. You linked to my blog.
That's the point about vulnerability in friendships, though, right? Because privacy requires, there's a vulnerability that it can only really happen when a certain level of privacy is guaranteed. Because I think, you mentioned before, Matt, the idea that we're doing this right now, the fact that we're in front of other people, was it Roland Barthes? I think he talked about the idea of, no, it wasn't him. The idea of what you're doing when you're observed, it's almost like physics. It changes what you're doing. There's a physics talk about this. We can talk about it psychologically. If I know I'm being watched, even if I don't think I'm changing my behavior, just the sheer act of being observed is changing what's happening anyway. I don't know, metaphysically speaking, in some different ways. So I think you need that level of privacy guaranteed to access particular echelons of vulnerability that would engender a stronger friendship. And once you take those things away or disrupt those, or you do something to lose faith in those, I think you remove the vulnerability equation in that friend you were mentioning. It's hard for me to imagine there'd be a friendship without significant repair in that kind of situation because of the breach of vulnerability, privacy, all those things that go with it.
Yeah, I mean, she was crummy. It was like my best friend's friend. And I'm like, I can see you writing about me. Hello. Like linking to my stuff.
Making it so
But whatever.
awkward.
That was 20. That was like 20s online message board stuff. But
I remember that time period. Yeah. Blogs were everything.
so dramatic. Like we needed to get lives, like literally get a life.
You needed to get anonymous Discord accounts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the upgrade now.
Yeah, exactly. It made it so much better. I also have to give a shout out. So, Cherry Street Tavern. You guys fans? Cherry Street? You're a Cherry Street fan?
Know where you mean. It's on
Logan
like 20th.
Square.
Yeah,
just never been in.
Maybe. Okay,
I don't know.
This is the full.
Is that what we're doing with the next podcast?
We're gonna do the live recording.
Yeah.
Might be one of the greatest places on earth. I'm scared that it's not gonna. I don't know. Like it could get sold and passed on to somebody else. There's an ecosystem around it. I'm just saying. Shout out to Cherry Street Tavern.
Shout out.
The guy, maybe brothers, they took it over in like the mid 70s from the guy who originally founded it. At least one of them is still in there. So you have this like wonderful experience of being like,
wow,
oh, there's a 70-year-old who's going to walk over there and like cut the meat and carve up the horseradish to make my sandwich at this bar. And there's just something really special about the commitment of community in that room too. Because there's not many people who would say, I'm going to do this thing at a very fair price point. We'll put it that way for like a otherwise big city experience and go like, no, this is just a basic situation on this thing where I am fully committed to this community and making sure that I show up as a upstanding member of this community and provide this space.
So a new idea for the podcast. You go in the tavern, you sit with a mic and you just wait for people to come in and make them interact.
This was my life before I started.
Maybe not in Philly. Maybe not in Philly. You could come up with there could be some real disasters in that book.
My longevity and whatever else probably depends on me doing that. Eating roast beef sandwiches and cheesesteaks and broccoli rabe until I die. Okay, and then I also wrote this note to myself, and then we're going to play the magic game of guess what I wanted you to introduce. I wrote down that modern friendship is a supermarket, and Joe Strummer is also lost in that supermarket. So on the upshot, maybe I'll make friends with him. All right, let's play the game. Anna, you're going to go first. Why do you think I just had to introduce you to Naomi Win today? And wrong answers welcome, because I wrote this down before you met as my best guest too. What do you think?
Well, I think Naomi brought a really interesting lens to this conversation about connection. Your background in psychology, like it was just really interesting hearing you work through these concepts through the lens of psychology. And you said financial too, like financial.
Yeah, I work with in finance.
In finance, like that's just that's such a interesting background. I don't know how to answer this. So I feel like I talk so much.
I'm taking it as a compliment. Take it as a compliment.
Take it as a compliment. No one understands what you do.
It's good. It's good. Very esoteric. That's going to be the most enigmatic thing.
Philly.
That's what's going to be my guess. Is like, is it people that live in Philly with brown hair? We're playing Clue now. It was the brunette in the Philly south of Philly. Yeah.
There you go. I just wanted to be able to talk about Cherry Street Tavern with somebody today. No,
that was it, yeah.
So I wrote down, it's hard to keep the people dancing, but it's easier to keep the music playing. I think you both do this in a really interesting way. And part of the way that I see it in both your work, and so Anna, what I want you to know about Naomi is a lot of her work is around decision-making under uncertainty. And when I ran into your work, shout out to Nina, one of the things that I immediately went was, wow, does you grapple with uncertainty and the role that it plays in
I see
these
that.
relationship repair questions. And oh my God, wouldn't it be cool to get Naomi to like,
What?
that's who I wanted to hear
Oh,
talk about all the
I
uncertainty.
see this. Yeah.
uncertainty.
And Naomi,
Yes.
same thing. Like you talk at this very, very high level so much of the time. And you have an ability.
That's such a nice way of saying I talk rubbish. I really appreciate the generosity.
But this is the thing. You talk at a high level, but then all of a sudden you can bring it down. And I see a completely different side of just how far you can take it down in the non-public email chain in a friend group. And all of a sudden I go, oh my God, this would be so cool to hear about how Anna might unpack the friendship side of the equation and you might unpack the risk and uncertainty stuff. And I just thought this is a friendship that I need to help create here somehow if I can.
Naomi, it's so cool.
I appreciate that.
Thoughts about like uncertainty and that you work with that, because that's a real running thread of my work too, is, you know, how to invest in friendships when there's so much uncertainty with who's going to stick around.
Yeah. No, I really love that. I'm excited we got connected. I'm going to go grab your book after this.
The email invite is coming after we press stop on this recording. I want to thank you both for coming out. Anna, plug the book. Plug where can people bug you on the internet these days?
You can find me at annagoldfarb.com. I have a free excerpt of the book. No email sign up required. Literally just click and read a little bit to see if, you know, it'd be up your alley. But yeah, I also write the Substack Friendship Explained. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the mechanics of friendship and why we choose who we choose and how to navigate modern friendships, come on over.
Highly, highly recommend. What about you, Naomi? People want to bug you on the internet. What's the best place to find you these days?
They have to find me in the tea leaves. I'm not particularly online. You can technically find me on LinkedIn. Regrettably, it's not my favorite place to be, but I am there. Also, my work email's on there somewhere for somebody else to reach out. But Anna, you can have my personal because we're the friends, right?
I say that with certainty of I would
yes, there you go.
Your email. That is so cool that we kind of wound our way. Did you plan for us to talk about uncertainty and our personal relationships and how we navigate?
This is the hope. This is the hope.
Wow.
The goal of this show is to find things that I think people have overlapping that otherwise you're not going to meet unless you just sat down next to each other at a bar.
Cool.
And let's make that happen. Because I think this is very important in an algorithmically driven world. So, hey, you know.
Uncertainty.
Well, we'll exchange emails and get a pint and talk about uncertainty next time.
It's coming, and it's coming soon. Anna, Naomi, thank you so much for joining me. Like, subscribe, comment, all the things below. This is Just Press Record, and we are out.
Thanks for joining us. Like, comment, and hey, subscribe below to Cultish Creative on YouTube if you haven't already. As the good compliance people want me to remind you, Matt Ziegler, that's me, is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments. No information on this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of clients of Sunpoint Investments. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you found this useful. I hope you talk to a professional before you try any of this stuff at home. And most of all, I hope you've subscribed. Be nice to each other out there. And don't forget, head over to cultishcreative.com and let's make curiosity a habit together. And I'm out.